I had shown you the equivalent circuit for a lossless all the parameters are defined. Then I went through deriving expressions for induced EMF in primary and secondary. I was calling it VP and VS, calling them VP and VS, because in a lossless case, the applied voltage is same as the EMF in the primary, and EMF produced is the same as voltage appearing across the secondary. Okay. These are the formulas we went through. Then I also showed you that a load resistance RL connected across the secondary gets transformed on the primary side after being multiplied by the square of the turns ratio. This concept can be generalized even for complex impedances. You replace RL by ZL. Then we solved some problems. We have done this in the previous lecture. I'm not going to spend too much time. Okay. How to select the wire for primary and secondary based on the current that is being carried by them. That is the table that you use all the time. Okay. Then I also did this problem where we calculated the area of cross section of the core based on other parameters that were given. It was a straightforward application of the equation that we have derived for the EMF. Another about how the load gets transformed to the primary. We have done all this. Let's move forward quickly. Doorbell problem, please go through it carefully. Dot notation, I told you that to capture the direction of winding, manufacturers put dots on the schematic. Explanation is given here. Losses, two primary type of losses, copper loss and iron loss. We went through all that. Then we went to the equivalent circuit, which is where I'm going to begin today. The ideal transformer is simply what is shown within the dotted rectangle. Okay, as simple as that. You have primary EMF EP and secondary EMF ES, and they are related by the turns ratio. Lossless transformer can simply have this description. EP will be same as VP, the applied voltage to the primary, and ES will be same as VS, the voltage appearing across the secondary. Unfortunately, real-life transformers are lossy. So to capture that, we define several parameters. RP as the resistance of the primary winding, RS as the resistance of the secondary winding, LP as the inductance of the primary winding, LS as the inductance of the secondary winding, VP as the actual voltage applied to primary, VS as the actual voltage appearing across the secondary, NP and NS, you know very well, number of turns in primary and secondary. Primary current is IP, secondary current is IS, okay. Now, the losses, the copper losses are captured by introducing RP in the primary and RS in the secondary. Also, the effect of inductance in the primary winding, if important, can be captured by putting a reactance in series with the resistance RP. This reactance obviously will be 2 pi F multiplied by LP, where LP is the inductance of the primary winding. On the secondary side, a similar thing, secondary resistance in series with a secondary reactance, inductive reactance, which is XS equal to 2 pi F LS, where LS is the inductance of the secondary winding. Now, to include the effect of core, we put a parallel circuit in the primary winding, where the losses in the core have both resistive and reactive nature. The resistive part is captured by using an equivalent resistance R naught, and the inductive part, or I would say the reactive part, is captured by a reactance X naught. The total current flowing in the core is denoted by I phi. The symbol is phi there. It is broken up into two parts, IW, which is actually the core loss in wattage, and I mu, which is the magnetization part of the current. These two currents, IW and I mu, are 90-degree out of phase with each other. So if you agree to this equivalent circuit, VP and EP will not be the same, and ES and VS will not be the same. The formulas that we derived for VP and VS in a lossless case now would become formulas for EP and ES. Okay, that's the whole idea. The dot notations are not shown in the schematic here, but they should be shown in these. Other diagram which I have got at the end of the presentation. I'm showing them here. This equivalent circuit is also for lossy transformer. It is containing even more information than what I have got in the previous diagram. What is the name of I phi? It is called excitation current. It is the current going through the core of the transformer. It has got two components, IC and IM. In my previous diagram, I was calling it IW. Okay, so please do not worry too much about actual notations. IC is the lossy part of I phi, and IM is the magnetic part of. These summations, IC plus IM, they are in the complex domain. Actual current being drawn, I'm now calling the input voltage as V1 in this diagram. In the previous diagram, I was calling it VP. Not a big issue, okay? V1 will produce an input current I1, which will be the primary current going in the lossless transformer plus whatever is taking away, whatever is being taken away by the core. On the secondary side, I2 and IS will be the same because there is no parallel circuit. All the core losses have been captured only on the primary side. Various parameters, EP is EMF in the primary, ES is EMF in the secondary. You can read it yourself. Even dot notation or dot convention is explained here in this diagram. Okay. Now, one very important thing that we want to do is look at efficiency of the transformer, of a lossy transformer. And at least in theory, try to maximize it. Okay. These are the descriptions of various currents, which are also given in the other diagram. Okay, so either way is fine. Now, what is efficiency? It is output power divided by input power. Lost power in watt is obviously difference of input and output powers. And the loss contains two factors, copper loss and iron loss. Iron loss is the core loss. Copper loss, which I am calling PC, is IP square RP plus IS square RS, right? Iron loss is PH, which is the loss due to hysteresis, and PE, which is the loss due to eddy currents. Normally, iron loss does not change much when IP and IS change. It is more or less constant. As transformer draws more and more currents, it is the copper loss that keeps going up. Also, in a lot of cases, the secondary current is not that large compared to primary. So in the equation for copper loss, we can ignore the second term on the right hand side approximately. So copper loss can be written as PC equal to almost IP square R. These are approximations, yes, they help us in doing some derivations. Input power is obviously VP IP. I'm ignoring the power factor for now. I'm assuming power factor is 1. Okay. Now what? How do we maximize the efficiency with all these assumptions made? Eta is the efficiency. It is PO divided by PI. And PO is PI minus PL. So we get 1 minus PL upon PI. PL is iron loss plus copper loss. And copper loss is being approximated as IP square R. So I write equation 36. Now I want to maximize eta with respect to IP. So what I do is I differentiate eta with IP and equate it to 0. Equate the result to 0. This is what I get. D by dIP of, because if you differentiate the right hand side of 36, differentiation of 1 will go to 0, minus sign will disappear, and Vp, by the way, is a constant. It can be taken out. So you need to differentiate the rest of the term and equate the result to 0. So IPRP plus P iron divided by IP is the term to be differentiated with respect to IP. If I do that, I get Rp minus P iron divided by IP square equal to 0. Yeah. Which gives me P iron equal to actually, not almost, equal to IP square R, which is what I have assumed the copper loss to be. So the condition for maximum efficiency under certain simplifying assumptions is that iron loss and copper loss should be equal to each other. I don't know how practical it is, but at least theory tells you that. If you can somehow make iron loss and copper loss equal, you'll get the best efficiency in the transfer. Another efficiency definition is related to energy output over, let's say, a full 24-hour period. 100 in percentage, 100 multiplied by total energy output over 24-hour period, and then total energy input over the same 24-hour period. This efficiency, all-day efficiency is the name. This efficiency will be different from the power efficiency. Both are important in a way. And if one is bad, the other would also be bad. And if one is good, the other is also going to be quite good. Other thing that we define for practical purposes is the change in output voltage, that is change in secondary voltage at no load versus full load. When nothing is being drawn, no current is being drawn from the transformer, you take the magnitude of output voltage, it is called no load voltage, then you draw maximum current or full load current at least, measure the magnitude of the output voltage again, take the difference of the two, divide that difference by full load voltage, and multiply the result by 100. Voltage regulation ideally should be 0. In practice, 5 to 10% generally is accepted. It is a function of how lossy the transformer is. Okay. So you have this document already. You can go through it once again. Most of the theory related to transformers is captured in this document. Now let's see how to solve some numerical problems based on the theory that we have done. Simple problems. A single phase 250 kVA, 11 kV, 415 volt, 50 hertz transformer has 80 turns on the secondary. Calculate the approximate values of the primary and secondary currents, the approximate number of primary turns, and the maximum value of the flux. Now, the nameplate of the transformer gives you information contained in the first sentence. kVA rating is given. Recommended primary voltage is always on the left side. Then an oblique sign comes in generally, and the secondary voltage is mentioned. The voltage on the left side is always the primary voltage. That is the way nameplates are printed. Voltage on the right side of the oblique sign is the secondary voltage. All voltages are RMS values. Frequency of operation is also printed generally on the nameplate. Number of turns may not be printed, but the info is available for a given transformer. So, first of all, there is no information about losses in the transformer. If that is the case, you assume the transformer to be lossless by default. Okay. So part A is quite straightforward. We will assume power factor equal to 1 because losses are negligible. So you take the kVA rating and divide it by kV rating for the primary to get the full load primary current. 250 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 3 divided by 11 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 3. This is how you get the primary current. Full load primary current. The value turns out to be 22.73 amperes approximately. For the secondary current also, you take 250 kVA, but now you divide it by 415 volts. This is how you get the secondary current. You are basically interpreting the information given on the nameplate itself. Once these two currents are known, and in fact, even the voltage ratio is known, you can figure out the turns ratio very easily. The voltage ratio is 11 kV divided by 415. Which works out to 26.51 or so. You can take the ratio of currents in the inverse order. You'll get almost the same number. So, number of turns in the primary is very easy to calculate. You know the turns ratio. You know the number of turns in the secondary, which is 80. You can easily calculate the number of turns in the primary. It is 2121 almost. The maximum value of the flux is related to, it's a lossless case, so Vp is related to maximum value of flux by this equation, which we have derived in the past. From there, you write phi m equal to Vp divided by square root of 2 pi f np and plug in all the values. You get the value of the maximum flux in Webers. Okay. Next problem. The primary winding of a 50 Hertz transformer has 480 turns and is fed from a 6400 volt supply. Primary voltage is 6400 volts. Determine the peak value of the flux in the core, that is phi m. The secondary voltage if the secondary winding has 20 turns. Again, since losses are not given, you assume lossless case. So phi m is given by the same equation that we were using in the previous problem. You plug in all the numerical values. You should get phi m equal to almost 0.06 Weber. Number of secondary voltage. So primary voltage is 6400 volt. Number of turns in the primary is 480 volts. Number of turns in the secondary is 20. So small a will be 24, and you straightforward go for the calculation of the secondary voltage. It's a very simple problem. Then third problem, a single phase 50 Hertz transformer has 80 turns on the primary winding and 400 turns on the secondary winding. Now it is stepping up. It's not stepping down anymore, like in the previous problems. So small a is less than 1. No, I'm wrong. Actually, number of 80 turns on the primary and 400. Yeah, it is stepping up. Yes. Fine. That does not change any of the equations. Equations remain the same. The net cross-sectional area of the core is 200 centimeters square. Make sure you convert this into meters square, because the calculations normally are done in MKS system. If the primary winding is connected to a 240 volt 50 Hertz supply, determine the EMF induced in the secondary winding and the maximum flux density in the core. Again, you assume lossless case. Okay. EMF in a lossless case is written as Vs for secondary winding. You use the formula directly. Everything is given. Okay. Only thing is you have to wait a minute. What are they asking? Yeah, in the secondary winding. Anyway, EMF can be directly calculated also based on the primary voltage given which is 240 volt and the turns ratio directly. 240 volt is being inputted to the primary, so output voltage has to be higher. It turns out to be 1200 volts. Okay. You don't need the equation containing phi m for calculating Vs. However, in the second part, you need that equation. Vs is known based on turns ratio information and the primary voltage information. You plug that value in part B and do the calculation. Now, remember, they want flux density rather than flux. Flux density means the flux phi m will be flux density multiplied by area of the cross section of the core. Little bit modified formula is what you need. Phi m is being replaced by Bm multiplied by A. Then you plug in all the numerical values and calculate BM. Make sure the area is being calculated in meters square. Again, let me remind you. The units for BM will be Weber per meter square. This unit is also known as Tesla. 1 T or 1 Tesla is 1 Weber per meter square. Okay. Double check calculations. Okay. Next one. A 10 kVA single phase transformer has its primary connected to a 2000 volt supply. It has 60 turns on the secondary winding and voltage across it is found to be 240 volt. That means secondary voltage is 240 volt. Primary voltage is 2000 volts. It's a lossless case again. Assuming the transformer to be ideal, yeah, they're saying that. Calculate the number of turns on its primary winding and the the full load primary and secondary currents. So you use NP divided by NS equal to VP divided by VS. So VP is 2000 volt, VS is 240 volt. NS is also given, wait a minute. Yeah, 60 turns on the secondary. So plug in all those values, you get N equal to 500. For calculating the currents, you have to begin with the kVA rating for both primary and secondary. It's a lossless case, so power factor is 1. You simply, for calculating the primary full load current, you divide 10 kVA by 2000 V. We have done that in other problems also. That gives you 5 amperes. And for calculating the secondary current, you divide 10 kVA by 240 volts. Or you can use this formula, which I have done here. You know turns ratio also. So based on that also, you can calculate the secondary. Okay. Next one. This is the last one. Okay. A 200 kVA, 3300 volt, 240 volt. Primary voltage is 3300 volt. Always on the left side, you see primary voltage. 240 volt is the secondary voltage. 50 hertz is the frequency. Single phase transformer, 80 turns on the secondary winding. Calculate primary and secondary currents on full load. Maximum value of the flux and the number of primary turns. You again begin with the kVA rating. 200 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 3 divided by 3300 gives you the primary full load current. A is NP by NS. Okay. NP is not given. Okay, but you know A based on the ratio of the primary and secondary voltages. 3300 divided by 240 is the value of small a. So you use that information and you use the value of NS to figure out NP. Now the flux calculation, first of all, IP and IS are easy enough. I'm sure you have done it in several problems. Flux calculation again demands that you use this equation. phi m equal to Vs divided by square root of 2 pi f ns. Plug in all the values, you'll get 0.0135 Weber. And NP, as I said, is very easy to calculate. It is turns ratio multiplied by ns. It turns out to be 1100. Yes, these are the kind of problems that you should be able to tackle very easily. Lot more problems are there. They are by and large application of what we have done in theory. Some of them actually are already solved. I'll send you all this. One important thing you should notice is that in general, the load applied to the secondary of a transformer is not a real number in general. It's always a complex number. So you should be able to handle those kind of problems also, even in a lossless case. Let me quickly go through this to maintain continuity. Problem 1 says a voltage transformer has so much primary voltage and so much secondary voltage. You are supposed to figure out the number of turns. Very easy, no issue at all. Okay, this we have done also previously. Then if the same transformer is connected to 240 ohm, how much will be the input, how much will be the two currents, and how much will be input and output power. And we have done this also, I believe. We got 100% efficiency because it's a lossless case. Okay. Power consumed was 60 watt. No, it's a repetition of what we did. Now, but the next problem is different. This we know already, let's not go there. Problem 3 says that if you take the transformer that is there in problem 2, and instead of connecting a purely resistive load, if you connect a complex load, what will happen? What will be the input impedance, first of all? Okay, this is, oh, by the way, this is again assuming real number. So don't worry about it. This is simple. I want to go to the complex load. Yeah. If the load is 8 minus J6 ohm, what will be the nature of calculations now? EP and VP are same because it's a lossless transformer. But now you will write the value in phasors. ES also will be written as in phasors. Now secondary current will be Vs divided by the load as a complex value. There will be a phase shift now between Vs and Is. This is real life, you know. So you will take 120 0 phase shift and you will convert 8 minus J6 ohm into polar form. It will work out to be 8 square plus 6 square is 100. You take square root, you get 10. And tan inverse of minus 6 divided by 8 gives you around minus 36.87 degrees. So you put that here. And then you do the division. So 120 divided by 10 becomes 12 amperes. And the phase angles get subtracted. 0 minus 36.87 degrees. So the phase angle of the secondary current is 36.87 degrees plus. You can convert it back into rectangular form. 12 cos 36.87 degrees plus J 12 sine 36.87 degrees amperes. Okay. Now the formula for calculating IP is still the same, but now complex values will be involved. IP is IS divided by A. A is known to us as 4. So it will be simply 3 and phase angle will not change. The division by turns ratio does not change the phase angle. Primary and secondary will be in the same phase. Wire size, etc. you can figure out based on the magnitude of the currents. for calculating wire size, you need the table which you already know about, and you don't worry about the phase of the current. You only worry about the magnitude. I have not given the answer. You can figure it out very easily, I'm sure. Now power consumption will be slightly different. Now power factor will come into the picture. In the primary winding, VP and IP are not in phase. They have 36.87 degrees phase difference. So cos of 36.87 degrees will get into the picture. I have done the complex power calculation. That means I have taken the VP complex value and I have multiplied it by IP complex value with complex conjugate brought in. This is how complex power is defined. I am ignoring 1/2 here because we are using RMS values for voltage and current. So the complex power VA in primary turns out to be what is written here, 1440 e to the power minus j 36.87 degrees. The real part of this will give you the consumed power in the primary in watts, and imaginary part will give you the reactive power in the primary. The active power or consumed power will be having units watts, as we did in single phase and three phase circuits. So the same concept applies here. The power diagram for the primary is shown here. QP is the negative value. So I'm drawing it this way. The triangle has to be in the negative half of the quadrant because phi p is actually a negative number. Now for the secondary also same thing has to be done. And because it's a lossless case, we see that SP and SS are almost the same. They're exactly the same. So PS will be same as PP and QS will also be same as QP because it's a lossless case. Efficiency, of course, will be 100%. Now, how about the input impedance in this case? It will become A square ZL, but ZL is a complex number. So A is 4, you multiply it 2 times, it becomes 16. And then 8 minus J6 ohm is the given impedance. So the value of input impedance is now a complex number. 160 ohm with an angle of minus 36.87 degrees. You should be able to handle complex loads also. That is the whole thing I'm trying to tell you. This we have already done, so no point going through it. Yeah, this also we have done, so I'm not going to repeat it. This also we have done. A lot of things are similar here compared to other things. Yeah, this problem is also done. Okay. Dot notation, you already know, it's a repetition, I know, but let's quickly go through it. Yeah, this is a very interesting one. The core of a two-winding transformer, as shown in figure A below, is subjected to a magnetic flux variation as indicated in figure B. Here, it's not a sinusoidal variation of the flux. So the equations that we derived for EMF will not work here. You have to go to the basics, Faraday's law. What is the induced EMF in each winding? The turns ratio is 200 and 200 in the 200 turns in the primary, 500 in the secondary. And flux actually is increasing linearly in the beginning up to 0.06 second. Then between 0.06 second and 0.1 second, it is constant at a value which is 0.009 Weber. Then it falls back to zero linearly, and it comes to zero again at time equal to 0.12 seconds. So for each of the three ranges of time, you have to apply Faraday's law. In the first case, it will require some work from you. In the first case, first thing is you figure out the equation for phi. The first straight line is beginning at 0 and it is ending at t equal to 0.06 and phi equal to 0.009. That should give you the slope of the line. The equation for phi in the first part of the curve turns out to be this. And for the second part, of course, phi is the constant, 0.009 Weber. Simple. For the third part, you will have to work out the equation again. It's a linear equation that you are looking for, y equal to mx plus c type of equation. You have to solve based on the fact that two coordinates are given. At small t equal to 0.1, the phi value is 0.009. At small t equal to 0.12, the phi value is 0. Based on that, you figure out the equation in the third part of the curve. It turns out to be what I'm writing here. Now you apply the formula. For primary winding, EAB is minus NAB d phi by dt. And for secondary winding, it is NCD d phi by dt. Number of turns in primary and secondary are given. And based on that, you should be able to figure out why I got these kind of EMF variations. Differentiation of the flux equation for each case, like in the first part, when you differentiate phi t with t, you simply get 0.15. So you see, actually there's a minus sign also in the equation, so you get minus 0.15. And then you multiply it by the number of turns. So you should be able to get minus 3 here. In the second part, the flux is constant, so derivative will be 0. So I'm getting a 0. In the third part, it is a more complicated equation. You'll have to differentiate it with time and multiply the result by the number of turns in the secondary. You should be able to get. Similarly, for the secondary winding also, you should be able to work out all this. Look at it when you get the document. If you have difficulty, I can help you out.